Whispers are swirling, tension is thick, and fans can't stop replaying the moment that has everyone talking. On a night that was supposed to be about laughter, music, and good vibes, everything took a sudden turn when Sierra decided to drop a truth bomb so heavy it nearly stopped the room. The cameras caught every flicker of shock on Rasheeda's face, every tremble in her hand, and the stunned silence from the crowd. She stood there trying to process what she had just heard, an accusation about Kirk so personal, so explosive, that even the producers looked frozen in place. No one expected this secret to come out here under these lights with the entire cast watching. In that instant, the atmosphere shifted from playful banter to something far more serious. Was this the end for Rasheeda and Kirk, or just the beginning of a new storm? The night had fallen heavy over the city, and the streets were soaked in a strange kind of silence. Lights from the tall buildings shimmered against the wet pavement, reflecting a world that seemed almost unreal. Deep in the heart of this restless place, rumors had started spreading like wildfire. Whispers in small back rooms, murmurs exchanged in shadowy corners, and knowing glances between people who seemed to know too much, yet spoke too little. It wasn't the kind of gossip that came and went quickly. This felt heavier, more dangerous, as if every word carried the weight of something that could shatter everything. In one of the quieter districts, a black car was parked just beyond the reach of the streetlights. Inside, two figures sat in silence, the faint glow of a phone screen illuminating their faces. The man in the driver's seat kept tapping his fingers against the wheel, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror again and again. The woman beside him had her arms folded, staring straight ahead as if trying to convince herself she wasn't already in too deep. They didn't speak, but the air between them was thick with tension. Far away from that scene, in a cramped apartment, with peeling wallpaper and a single buzzing light bulb, another conversation was unfolding. A phone lay on the table, speaker on, as two voices spoke in urgent, hurried tones. One was deep and steady, the other trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Words like proof, leverage, and payback kept surfacing, followed by long pauses where neither dared to say more. The plan they were discussing wasn't small. It was the kind of thing that could pull powerful people down, and they both knew it. Meanwhile, in the glittering center of the city, a party was underway in one of the tallest buildings. Champagne glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and laughter spilled into the air. The guests looked like they belonged in a world untouched by trouble, but behind the smiles, there was something else. One man, dressed in an expensive suit, kept stepping away from the crowd to check his phone. Each time he returned, his smile seemed just a little more forced. In the corner of that same room, a woman in a red dress stood alone, watching everything with sharp, calculating eyes. She wasn't there to drink or dance. She was there to observe. Every movement, every hushed conversation, every sudden change in expression, she took it all in. She knew the night wouldn't end with champagne and music. There were truths hanging in the air, waiting to drop like glass shattering on marble. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft at first, then harder, until it drowned out the cities. Somewhere down the block, a figure in a hooded jacket slipped through the crowd unnoticed. They moved quickly, turning corners without hesitation, as if following a route memorized long ago. In their pocket was a small black envelope, sealed and marked with nothing. To anyone else, it would have looked meaningless, but to the right person, its contents would be explosive. In another part of the city, an old bar stayed open late, its dim light spilling onto the cracked sidewalk. Inside, a man sat hunched over a glass, turning it slowly in his hands. He wasn't drinking, he was thinking. The bartender gave him space, knowing better than to ask questions. Every now and then, the man's phone lit up with messages he didn't answer. When he finally picked it up, he stared at the screen for a long time before pressing the call button. The voice that answered was familiar, but the tone was colder than he remembered. Back in the tall building where the party was still alive. The man in the suit slipped away once more, this time disappearing into a private elevator. The woman in the red dress watched him go, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She set down her drink and followed at a careful distance. The elevator stopped at one of the top floors, and the man stepped out into a hallway lined with closed doors. He moved quickly, unlocking one and stepping inside. Moments later, the woman appeared, pausing just long enough to listen before quietly pushing the door open. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by the glow of a laptop screen. Papers were spread across the table, along with a phone, a recorder, and what looked like photographs. The man froze when he saw her, but she closed the door behind her, leaning against it with calm certainty. "You've been busy," she said softly, her voice steady but sharp. He didn't answer, his eyes darting to the photographs as if deciding whether to hide them or admit what they showed. The air between them felt like it could ignite at any moment. Outside the window, lightning flashed, briefly flooding the room with white light. For a second, everything was exposed to papers. The faces in the photographs, the tension in their eyes. Then the darkness returned, and the sound of rain filled the silence. The woman stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor, and placed a single card on the table. It had no name, no number, just a small, distinct symbol. He stared at it, and something in his expression shifted from shock to recognition. Across town, the figure in the hooded jacket reached an old, unmarked building. They slipped inside, shutting the door quickly behind them. The hallway smelled of dust and age, the floor creaking with each step. They climbed the narrow staircase to the third floor, stopping at a door with a single light shining beneath it. Knocking twice in a specific rhythm, they waited. A moment later, the door opened just enough for them to slide the black envelope inside before retreating down the stairs without a word. Back at the party, no one noticed that two of their guests were gone. Laughter still filled the air and music still played, but the edges of the night were starting to fray. A man in the crowd received a message on his phone and excused himself, disappearing into the elevator without looking back. The woman in the red dress and the man in the suit were still in that quiet room, their conversation low but intense. Outside, the rain poured harder, as if the city itself was trying to wash something away. Far below, in the narrow streets, the hooded figure moved quickly toward the train station. Each step felt heavier, the envelope's absence in their pocket, replaced by the weight of what they'd just done. Somewhere in another part of the city, that envelope would be opened, and once it was, there would be no turning back. The room fell silent after Sierra's shocking confession. For a moment, it was as if the cameras had stopped rolling. The crew had frozen in place, and the entire set was holding its breath. Rasheeda stood there, her eyes wide, trying to process the words that had just escaped Sierra's lips. "It's true," 2 words. Just 2 simple words, yet they hit Rasheeda harder than any argument, any headline, or any tabloid article ever had. Kirk's face twisted, part anger, part disbelief, part guilt. He opened his mouth to respond, but Rasheeda raised her hand, signaling him to stay silent. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Say a word," Rasheeda warned, her voice trembling. She wasn't ready to hear excuses, not yet. Sierra shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the two. "Look, I didn't mean to put it out there like this, but you asked me, Rasheeda, and I'm not gonna sit here and lie to your face." Rasheeda's chest rose and fell, her breathing quick and uneven. "You could have told me in private," she snapped. "I tried," Sierra shot back, "but every time I tried to pull you aside, you brushed me off. You said you were fine. You said you didn't believe the rumors. So I let it go. Till now." The whispers from the crew grew louder. Some were exchanging glances, others were biting their lips, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut the scene. But deep down, everyone knew this was reality gold. Kirk finally stepped forward, his voice low but firm. I don't know what. She's talking about Rash. You know how people in Atlanta run their mouths? This is just drama for the cameras. But Rasheeda wasn't looking at him anymore. Her eyes were locked on Sierra. How do you know? Who told you? And don't. You dare say someone told me unless you're ready to drop names? Sierra took a deep breath. It was this, Kirk. I'm not out here trying to ruin your marriage. I'm trying to keep my friend from looking like a fool on national TV. The words hung heavy in the air. Rasheeda's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. If there's a baby, Kirk, I need to hear it from you right now. Is there? Kirk didn't answer immediately. And that silence was louder than any confession. Rasheeda's voice trembled. You're not saying no. Kirk finally looked her dead in the eyes. I don't even wanna. Dignify this nonsense with an answer. Then answer it anyway, she demanded. Before he could speak, Erica, who had been watching from the sidelines, suddenly stepped into the frame. You want answers? I'll give you one. Yes. There's a baby. And no, it's not Rasheeda's. Gasps erupted. Sierra's eyes went wide, and Rasheeda's entire body froze. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under her. Kirk spun toward Erica, his voice booming. You don't know what you're talking about? Stay out of my marriage. But Erica didn't back down. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen the proof. I've seen her. Rasheeda's breath caught in her throat. She whispered. Erica's lips curled into a half-smirk, half-pitying smile. The mother. And trust me, she's not hiding anymore. Word is, she's ready to go public. The room exploded into chaos. Producers rushed in, trying to calm everyone down, but the cameras stayed rolling. Kirk was shouting over everyone. Sierra was trying to pull Rasheeda aside, and Erica was standing there, arms crossed, like she had just detonated a bomb. Rasheeda's knees buckled, and Sierra quickly caught her before she could fall. I got you, Sierra murmured. Don't let him see you break. But the truth was, Rasheeda already felt broken. Kirk stormed toward the door, muttering curses under his breath. I don't need this. Y'all can spin this however you want, but I'm done. Rasheeda found her voice just as he reached for the handle. Walk away if you want, Kirk. But remember, walking away doesn't erase the truth. There's a baby out there that's yours. It's gonna come out, with or without you admitting it. He paused, hands still on the door, but didn't turn around. A long silence followed before he finally left, slamming it shut behind him. Sierra helped Rasheeda into a chair. Breathe, girl. Just breathe. But Rasheeda's mind was already racing. If what Erica said was true, then someone somewhere was carrying a piece of Kirk's life, and it wasn't her. The emotional weight of the moment pressed down on her. Every past betrayal, every fight, every late-night business meeting Kirk had claimed to attend came flooding back. It all suddenly made too much sense. Sierra knelt beside her. Listen, I know this hurts, but you're not alone. If you want, I'll help you find out who she is. We can get proof before this blows up bigger than it already has. Rasheeda nodded slowly, wiping away the tears she had been holding back. No, I don't want proof for the world. I want proof for me. I need to know the truth, not for the cameras, not for social media. For me. Erica, still lingering nearby, leaned in. You might not have to look far. Word is, she's gonna be at the next event. And if Kirk shows up with her, that's your confirmation right there. The thought made Rasheeda's stomach turn. If he shows up with her, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Sierra finished it for her. Then you'll know exactly who you're really married to. And just like that, the stage was set for the next showdown, one that could destroy Rasheeda's marriage once and for all. The room was thick with tension. Every eye darted between Rasheeda, Kirk, and Sierra, as if the slightest movement might set off another emotional explosion. The cameras stayed locked in, catching every flicker of anger on Kirk's face, every tremble in Rasheeda's hands. The air felt charged, like the moments before a summer thunderstorm, silent, yet heavy with the promise of chaos. Sierra leaned forward in her chair, clearly realizing the magnitude of what she had just admitted in front of everyone. Her voice shook as she repeated, "Rasheeda, I swear on everything, I wouldn't say this if I wasn't sure." She didn't look at Kirk, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear, but the damage was done. Her words now hung in the air, undeniable, unstoppable. Kirk's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice sharp and defensive. "This is how y'all start dream-off rumors, not facts." He turned to face the room as if seeking allies among the group. "Y'all really gonna sit here and take her word over mine?" But no one rushed to defend him. Even those who usually played peacemaker, like Rasheeda's closest friends, stayed quiet, sensing that this was no time to intervene. Rasheeda's eyes were locked on Kirk, not with her usual warmth, but with a cold, almost detached focus. It was the look of a woman who had been here before, too many times, and was tired of hearing the same script. "You told me we were good," she said, softly, almost to herself. "You told me there was nothing out there that could hurt us anymore." Then her voice rose with a sudden burst of anger. "And now I'm hearing this, in front of everybody." Kirk rubbed his temples, pacing slightly. "I told you people lie, Rasheeda. People want to see us fail. They've been trying to break us up for years." His words sounded rehearsed, almost like he had given this speech before. But this time, it wasn't working. Sierra suddenly spoke again, her voice firmer now. "This ain't about hating or breaking y'all up. It's about the truth. And if you think I'm gonna sit back and watch my friend get played, you've got me messed up." The room murmured with low whispers. You could see the crew members shifting uncomfortably behind the cameras. They knew they were filming reality gold, but also that this was dangerously close to crossing into real, irreparable damage. Rasheeda leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed tightly. "If you're telling me this is all lies, then look me in my eyes right now, Kirk, and swear on your mama's grave it's not true." The words hit like a hammer. Kirk froze, his lips pressed into a thin line. It was the kind of silence that screamed louder than any outburst. "See," Sierra said under her breath, shaking her head. "You can't even say it." Rasheeda's breathing grew heavier. She blinked rapidly, trying to keep her composure. But it was clear the weight of Sierra's words and Kirk's silence was cracking her walls. "Do you understand what this does to me? What it does to us? Every time I start to trust you again, this happens." Kirk's voice dropped almost a whisper. "Rasheeda, I don't want to lose you." "Then stop giving me reasons to," she snapped, her voice shaking. At that moment, the producers stepped in, urging everyone to take a break. But Rasheeda didn't move. She sat there, staring into the distance, as if replaying every moment of their past in her mind. The cameras caught every second, the tear rolling down her cheek. The way Kirk hesitated before even trying to comfort her, and the way Sierra sat frozen, knowing she might have just changed their relationship forever. When the break was called, most of the cast filed out, leaving just Rasheeda, Kirk, and Sierra in the room. The silence was deafening. "You could have pulled me aside," Rasheeda finally said to Sierra. "You could have told me in private." Sierra shook her head. "If I told you in private, you'd brush it off and he'd talk his way out of it again. At least here, he's got nowhere to hide." Kirk threw his hands in the air. "Nowhere to hide from what?" "Lies." He turned back to Rasheeda, desperation creeping into his tone. "Babe, please. You know how I feel about you. You know I've been trying to make things right." Rasheeda's lips trembled, but she said nothing. The trust between them, already fragile, felt shattered once more. And just when it seemed the storm might quiet, another cast member, one who had been silent the whole time, stepped forward. "I don't want to stir the pot," they began cautiously, "but Sierra's not the only one who's heard about this baby situation." The room froze again. Kirk's eyes went wide, and Rasheeda's head snapped toward the new voice. The idea that there might be multiple people with the same story suddenly made this rumor feel a lot less like gossip and a lot more like truth. "You've got to be kidding me," Kirk muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. But the sweat on his forehead told a different story. Sierra glanced at Rasheeda, her expression saying without words, "This is what I was trying to protect you." Rasheeda stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need air," she muttered, walking toward the door. Kirk followed her, but she stopped him with a single raised hand. "No, not right now." The cameras caught the final shot of her walking out, leaving Kirk standing there helpless, exposed, and under more pressure than he'd ever faced on camera. And though the scene ended for the viewers, everyone in that room knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was only the beginning. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Cameras zoomed in on every twitch of Rasheeda's face, every subtle tremor in Kirk's hands, every flicker of emotion that crossed Sierra's eyes. This wasn't just reality TV anymore. It was raw, unfiltered human chaos playing out for millions to see. And as much as Kirk wanted to retreat to find some corner of the stage and disappear into it, the energy of the room refused to let him go. Rasheeda's voice, still cracked from the weight of the last hour, came again. "Do you know what it feels like?" she said slowly. Each word a deliberate stab of truth, to have your own husband make you feel like the last person to know the truth about your own life. The crowd murmured. Kirk's eyes darted toward the audience, not for support, but out of instinct, like a man searching for an escape route. The truth was, there was no escape. Sierra leaned forward, her voice low but cutting. "Rasheeda, I didn't want to tell you like this, but keeping it in, it was eating me alive." And there it was, that subtle shift in the air. The unspoken battle between the woman who wanted to protect her friend and the one who just detonated a bomb in her marriage. Rasheeda's hands trembled as she reached for a tissue, dabbing her eyes but never breaking her gaze from Kirk. "You sat there," she said, her voice breaking, knowing that every rumor, every whisper, it wasn't just gossip. It was my reality, and you let me look crazy defending you. Kirk's lips parted like he might respond, but nothing came out. He rubbed the back of his neck, took a breath, and finally spoke. "I ain't perfect," he began, his voice low, shaky. "But you know I've always had your back. People love to drag my name. They love to make me the villain. But this ain't how it went down." Sierra's eyes widened. "So you're saying I'm lying?" Kirk turned to her, his frustration finally bubbling to the surface. "I'm saying people twist things, Sierra, and sometimes you hear what you think you heard." The audience gasped. The tension skyrocketed. Rasheeda's jaw tightened, not because she didn't believe Sierra, but because she'd heard this playbook before. Deny, deflect, redirect. "Don't you dare sit here and gaslight me," Rasheeda snapped, her voice rising above the murmur of the crowd. "This isn't about what Sierra heard. This is about what you did." For a moment, silence swallowed the stage. Even the production crew seemed frozen, waiting for the next explosion. Then Sierra spoke again, softer this time, but with a finality that hit harder than shouting ever could. "I wish I didn't have to be the one to say it. But yes, Rasheeda, it's true." Rasheeda closed her eyes, her shoulders sinking under the weight of confirmation. The sound of her quiet sobs filled the space between them. She wasn't crying like someone who'd been blindsided. She was crying like someone who'd been holding hope against all odds and finally had to let it go. Kirk reached out, placing a hesitant hand on her arm. "Babe," she flinched. That tiny reaction, that instinctive recoil spoke volumes. It was the moment Kirk realized this wasn't just another fight. This was the kind of wound that didn't heal with a dinner date and an apology. This was a fracture that once deep enough could split the entire foundation. The host stepped in, sensing the conversation was teetering on the edge of going completely off the rails. Let's take a second here. We all know relationships, especially in the public eye, are complicated. But right now, I think the viewers and Rasheeda deserve clarity. All eyes turned to Kirk. He took a deep breath, the kind of breath a man takes when he knows the next sentence could either save him or destroy him. "Look," he said slowly, "I'm not gonna sit here and act like I ain't made mistakes in the past. I have. But this situation right here, it's not what you think." Rasheeda opened her mouth to respond, but Kirk held up a hand. "I get it. You've already made up your mind. Maybe there's nothing I can say to change it. But I need you to know that no matter what you've heard, no matter what's been said, I'm here. I've always been here. And I don't want this to be the thing that breaks us." The sincerity in his tone made some in the audience soften. But Rasheeda's expression didn't budge. "You had a choice," she said, her voice now calm but ice cold. "And you made it. Don't ask me to pretend it didn't happen." The finality in her tone sent a chill through the set. Sierra looked down at her hands, torn between relief at having spoken her truth and guilt over the damage it had caused. The host wrapped things up, thanking everyone for their honesty, though the word felt almost ironic in the thick tension that still hung in the air. As the cameras began to fade out, Rasheeda stood, her posture regal despite her tear-streaked cheeks. Without looking at Kirk, she walked off stage, Sierra following a few steps behind. Kirk remained seated, staring into the space she'd just left, his jaw tight, his mind no doubt racing through every choice that had led to this moment. The credits rolled. The audience buzzed, and viewers across the country sat glued to their screens, knowing they'd just witnessed a fracture in one of reality TV's most talked about relationships, one that might never fully mend. But one thing was certain, the conversation wasn't over. Not here, not now, definitely not. For the millions watching at home. So, after everything you just heard, you already know this drama is far from over. Do you think Rasheeda's tears were the end of it? Think again, because the next episode is about to turn the whole game upside down. Kirk's got his back against the wall, Sierra's holding nothing back, and the truth. It's messier than we could have imagined. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because you do not want to miss what's coming. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side are you on? Team Rasheeda, Team Kirk, or Team Sierra for finally spilling the tea? And hey, if you're as shocked as we are, smash that like button so we know you're here for the real, unfiltered drama.